Hello, hello. My Wi-Fi connection is crazy right now. Good afternoon. Um, Here go that filler time. So I just got off of a Zoom call. I think it was a dope Zoom call with the man Christian White from Roxbury, who leads a series called Listening to Learn. It just highlights different people's lives and experiences. So I figured I'd jump right into continuing. I talked to him about the importance of. We were talking to me about politics and the importance of understanding how to apply pressure, what the different roles do, why things are so slow, what kind of progress should people expect, the whole nine. We're kind of going through it. And of course, we never have enough time to really get into the topic. But I figured I'd carry it over. I told him that I feel like myself and other people could do a lot more in terms of demystifying what politics is about, showing you the difficulties of it. But actually, now I'm going to talk about how easy it could be. Some of the parts of it could be. Um, and I want to relate it to Boston and the Boston City Council and certain things happen around Methadone Mile, Recovery Mile, Marty's Mile. As you know, as you've heard me say before, and I'm staying on this issue because I think it's important that we stay on issues, right? A lot of times we hop from issue to issue to issue. You know, everybody's hot on it for a moment, and then they're gone. Methadone Mile's been here for 7 years. I'm gonna stay on it. As long as Mingos is on it, I'm gonna stay on it. Now, I'm gonna focus on something entirely different than the recovery side. If you're interested in the recovery side of things, like I said, the South End Roxbury Partnership 2.0 is a group of regular, everyday residents who've organized to do some things around both the recovery and the mitigation, the making sure that residents don't have to deal with the needles, the shit, the urine, the theft, the crime, the prostitution, the public lewdness, all of that. And I might have to say some things about your favorite city councilor or your favorite city councilors or community leaders that you might not like. Um, but that's just the way it is. So methadone mile, the mitigation part, right? The recovery part. Let me be honest. The recovery part is very difficult. You know, you're talking about individual people, all come from all different backgrounds of life, with a serious addiction. One of the most powerful addictions in the world is the opioid addiction, right? Having enough beds, being there, and then be able to put your hands on them when they're ready to get into a detox bed. The bridge coming down, the politics around lawsuits to getting the bridge up, having enough places in the meantime for them to go, whether safe injection sites are a good idea or a bad idea, whether comfort stations are really comfort stations or whether they're just giving them a nice safe place to shoot heroin, the disparate treatment between blacks going through the crack epidemic, whites dealing with opioids, all that on the recovery side. I'm going to leave all that alone for a minute. And I'm going to focus on how I think, my belief that fixing or mitigating or dealing with the other stuff that comes with it, it really ain't that, try not to cuss, it really ain't that hard to come up with a plan and push a plan forward to deal with that. And I think I tagged this like we need residents and leaders with will, who have willpower, who will actually do it. Now, that South End Roxbury Partnership 2.0 group I'm talking about, they're putting elected officials on the spot. They're asking them to commit to certain things, and I shout out them for doing that. It's a dope process, and I hope people continue to check in, even though I know, support waivers. Some nights we have 30 people in the Zoom meeting. Some nights we only have 10. That's cool. It'd be like that sometimes, but I hope people do more to tune in and join the group and pay attention to it. But the city councilors that have been in office, including the mayor, including state reps, it's really not that hard to fix the issue, to deal with the issue that I'm talking about, right? To deal with the needles, the urine, the public nudeness, the prostitution. It's really not that hard. And everything that they've been doing has been less than enough, has it been nothing, or they've been just bullshitting basically. It took me about, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, a former colleague, and after the conversation, it took me about 10 minutes to come up with 3 pages. 3 pages of a list of things that can get done at different levels of government that ain't that hard to do. You just have to have the will to do it. And the residents, and that's the elected officials, and don't think as residents, I'm just going to be banging on the elected officials, because the residents got the same responsibility. Like, if you, I heard you guys heard me talk about my experience in Michael Flaherty's office. Let me put you on some fly shit he said that I took from his meeting the other night. Someone asked him, what would you do if this issue was in your front yard? If you came out of your house and you had to deal with this, what would you do? And I thought it was a good question. And I thought his answer was, first things first, I would blow a freaking gasket. And then we'd be on it right away. And because I worked for him and because I've watched him in politics, I know that to be true. I know that South Boston residents have the will to respond in numbers and not tolerate certain things. Now, this is not to disparage, and we can go back in history, right? They had the will when they were busing black and brown children into their neighborhoods. They had the willpower to organize and throw rocks, stones, and racial slurs at kids. They had the willpower to do it. The residents did it. There was elected officials out there, present and future, that stood with them and did it. I'm not glorifying it. I'm not justifying it, but I want to show you that was willpower. They were there doing it, right? That's the same will that I spoke about when I talk about the South Boston electors getting together, fighting behind a closed door, and then making sure South Boston is taken care of. So when I hear him say we wouldn't tolerate the shit, I know he means it. I believe part of the problem in our community is we tolerate the shit. So if we're going to tolerate it, why would anybody else step in the way and put their neck out for us if we're going to look the other way and just deal with the shit? Now, I'll pause and I'll recognize the inherent differences in power that, Irish Catholics have a longer history in politics and they're more entrenched and have a little bit more political power. But I'm not going to make no excuses. It comes down to willpower. What the residents will demand of their leadership, what they'll do if their leadership does not reach their expectation level, and then because of that will, what it forces their leadership to do is to meet those or exceed those expectations. And then they're rewarded with being able to keep a seat. Then they're rewarded with a promotion, like going from city councilor or the state rep to state senator, or from state senator to Congress, or president of the state senate. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a history there that you could look at where these people have performed in this fashion. Now, I know at times we have the will, but then can we sustain it for a little longer than a minute, for a little longer than a flash? So if it takes me 10 minutes, no staff, just the noodle, it took me 10 minutes to write out a list of things that if I was a city councilor, or I was your state rep, or I was your elected leader, I would come and sit with my residents and say, this is my plan. This is what I thought of. I want to bring it back to you as an organizer first. I want to bring it to you, my residents, my community residents, and make sure that you think this is a good plan too. And once we agree that this is a good plan, let's put the plan into action. And here's how I think we should put the plan into action, right? That's the organizing, that's the building community. So rather than wait for, and I'm sorry if I have to apologize to the South End Partnership for kind of jumping the gun. I've been working on this issue for a long time, so I just want to make sure I'm including the rest of the community so that they can be part of these talks as well. Because I think if the community buys into some of these as a plan, then they should get behind it. They should pick up the phone. They should call their city councilor, and they should call their mayor, and they should ask that these things be done. So now, let me calm down a second. Getting worked up. That's how I feel about politics. I get worked up. It's about this. I know these people. You know what I'm saying? I'm from this hood. Methadone Mile starts at Andrew Square. It runs from Andrew Square basically down to Boston Medical Center. and then it impacts all the streets to the side. So it comes through New Market, it floods all the way up to Dudley Street and all the way up to Blue Hill Avenue. It gets all the way into the south end, past the hospital, on to the right, Albany Street, Harrison Ave. It gets all the way up to like the Mass Ave line. It even gets into the nice, wealthy places where the brownstones are, right? Where the people paid $1 million after they gentrified the neighborhood and pushed all the black people and the Latinos that live there out. Sidebar. There's 7 people, 7 out of 13 councilors. There's 7 people that just on the city council represent the neighborhood. There's 4 at-large councilors, 4. There's Michael Flaherty, there's Michelle Wu, there's Anissa Asabi George, and Julia Mejia. Julia Mejia being the newest one. Everybody else has been there for quite some time. 4 of them represent all those neighborhoods I just spoke of at all times. Then there are 3 district councilors where this problem runs through. There's Frank Baker, District 3, Kim Janey, District 7, and Ed Flynn, District 2. So now you have 7 out of 13. Oh, 8. I got to check myself. You have 7 out of 13 people who are responsible for delivering services, city services. Let me back up. They're responsible for advocating for city services. The mayor is responsible for delivering them. They're responsible for responding to your concerns and saying, when you call, they say, I'm going to tell the mayor's office that this is what we need, if they agree with you. So, here's my plan that I'm offering to the community. Some ideas that if you want, you can adopt. You can talk to your neighbors about it. You can talk to your city councilor about it. You can call 311 and talk to your mayor about it. And back it up and see if you have the will to do it. And if they have the will to listen to you. So, again, let me just explain that so I can be clear. City councilors do not run the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. These 7 city councils I named do not supervise or hire for public works. They do not do those things. They get the call. They call the mayor's office. The mayor's office then takes their call and decides what to do with it. However, if 7 councilors call the mayor's office with the same plan, the same ideas, the same talking points, and asking for the same thing, it's pretty hard for the mayor's office to say no. The mayor's office gets the call, they decide whether they're going to rock with it or not, and then they call their lieutenants. I call the district chief of public works. I call the director of Parks and Recreation. I call whoever needs to be called based on what was asked of me if I'm the mayor, and make sure I put that ball in motion. And then I tell them if I'm a good mayor, if I'm a good manager, and I know how to manage people, then I say I need to report back. Make sure it's done right, because I don't want to hear back from these counselors, and they don't want to hear back from the residents unless it's a good job. Thank you for doing a good job. Because that's how I get reelected. That's what I'm paid to do. That's what their taxpayer dollars go to when they pay excise tax, the homeowner's tax, the parking tickets. That's what they're paying for these services to be delivered. Now they keep saying it's an epidemic, it's an epidemic, it's an epidemic. If it's an epidemic, let's respond with an epidemic-sized response, right? All right. Without taking long, I'm going to get right into it. So I believe, as a constituent, that you should ask for the following things. I told you where that mile runs. It's a geography, right? It's pretty much not confined to that area, but you can generally map an area from Nubian Square down Washington Street to the south end, and from Andrew Square up Mass Ave to the south end. You can paint a little map bound in by the highway where this is the biggest, where this is the area, the mile and then some. If I was an elected official working for you, what I would ask for the mayor, and I wouldn't need 7. I would have already asked this by myself. But sometimes people need a little support. They need a little push. Maybe they can't come up with the idea. Maybe their staff of 4, 5, 6 people ain't enough. They don't have enough time in the day to come up with what I came up with in 10 minutes. Maybe. We just different. How about a dedicated, maybe 2, you'd have to decide depending on the length of the area and how fast these things run, but a street sweeping machine. Let's start with a street sweeper. You know, the big street sweeper with the brush that sprays the water on the ground and picks up all the trash. How about a dedicated unit of 1, 2, or 3 machines that stay in this area, on top of what they already do, but they just stay in this area all day, and they just clean the streets. They make sure that the streets are clean. That's all they do, because it's an epidemic. So let's dedicate some responses, a legitimate response to address the epidemic and help the residents out with what they're dealing with. I can't answer that. That's just the streets. To match what the street cleaners are doing on the streets. How about if I'm the mayor, or if I'm the city councilor, this is what I'm asking for. How about a dedicated crew made up of Parks and Recreation staff, Public Works staff, and the Sharps Needle team? How about you get in the room? I ask my directors to make $100,000 a year, taxpayer dollars. How about y'all get in the room and map out how many parks are in the area? Where are the most affected parks, right? How about Clifford Park? How about Ramsey Park, which is now Michael Bivens Park? How about you just inventory, give me a list of all the parks in this area that we just described, from Nubian Square to the south end, and from Andrew Square to the south end in that area. Give me a list of the parks, and then tell me how many people we need to walk through that park 2 to 3 times a day to make sure there's no needles in the parks, playgrounds, mulch areas, grass, what have you. That's their dedicated job, because it's an epidemic. So it needs a response that can respond to an epidemic, right? You can't send 4 people to deal with needle pickup for an epidemic. You probably need 15 to 20, maybe more, all trained in hazmat pickup, all being safe, all paid a good wage to do the work. So now you're in the parks. Now I need Public Works. Get my Public Works chief, the guy I pay 6 figures, over $100,000 to. I need him in the room. And when he comes in the room, I say, listen, I got the street sweepers for the street. That falls under Public Works. Now I need a sidewalk crew. I need guys that are trained in hazmat as well. I need them walking the sidewalks, making sure there's no needles, making sure there's no trash, making sure there's no empty condoms, making sure there's no broken glass, making sure all the things that you see, because homeless people and people with addictions have been loitering concentrated in this area, that at least the residents don't have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. At least they don't have to walk their children through a street that's covered with used condoms and used needles with blood and heroin in them. That's just what I would do, right? How many men and women is it going to take to walk these streets? How big does the crew need to be? How big a crew do you need? Give me the total budget amount. Give me the amount of staff you need, and let me know what that is, because I'm going to team you up with the Parks and Recreation crew. I'm going to team you up with the street sweepers, and we're going to make sure this area stays clean to mitigate all the bullshit that's going on and has been going on for 7 years. That's just what I would do. That's what I would suggest if I was a city councilor. That's what I would do if I was the mayor of the city of Boston. Right? So where we at? So I want to go back to Michael Flaherty. Michael Flaherty gave me I thought I had a good list, and Michael Flaherty said, hey, they should be power washing the sidewalks. I said, oh shit, power washing. They got power washers. You know, the big, they come out with the super pressure, and you can clean all the dirt. You can put some industrial soap on the ground to make sure you can clean the sidewalks, and they come out with the power washer. How many power washers we got? I need an inventory of how many power washers we got. Make sure at least one person on each team covering the sidewalks after they picked up the needles and the trash and the condoms. Make sure they're power washed. Now maybe they can't do it every day. It's a lot of water. Maybe they do the power washing once a week. Maybe. But it's an epidemic. So maybe they can respond in kind with enough resources to address an epidemic. Shout out to Mike Flaherty. That was a good idea, because in Southie they got the will to do it. Obviously they power washed in some places in Southie, because Michael didn't just, you know what I'm saying? Michael didn't just poof come up with that idea out of the blue. He's seen it. The city council has been on the body for 16 years. So if you can get it done in South Boston through Public Works, you should be able to get it done in Roxbury and the South End. Well, I'm just trying to read the list, make sure I didn't miss anything here. Okay. More needle boxes. People ask for needle boxes. Let's get more. Now, I get it. Somebody overdosing or very high on heroin might not have the wherewithal to put it in the needle boxes. But if you had needle boxes set up in these certain places, with the caveat that don't just put them anywhere. Like when we asked for one in Roxbury, don't put it across the street, right across the street from the front door of Orchard Garden K through 8 school. You could have put it across the street on the other side of Melnia Cass where the kids don't have to walk by it. So let's put it away from where children congregate, where it might be. Well, let's put it in an appropriate place. You know what? You get it. And if you put those along these routes where people are, maybe more people will be encouraged to put the needle away. Or maybe just your sharps team, when they're out, rather than having to carry a bucket, they could just fill up a bucket, and then the next half mile there's another box. They can just dump it in the box. What's that? 4 suggestions so far? This is not heavy lifting, right? Ain't nobody asked for $1 million. This I don't think this should has come up to $1 million yet. Oh, we talk about another thing. We talk about, and this has been an idea I've tried to float around for a while, and just nobody seems to grab onto it. Michael Flaherty was the first one to grab onto it last night when we had this meeting, the Zoom meeting that's hosted by the South End Roxbury Partnership 2.0. If you're part of these meetings, then you can have a voice, you can talk directly to the counselors, and you can have this kind of dialogue where you can actually hold somebody accountable and share ideas. So I said, from working in his office and being elected officials weigh in on zoning. And so let me just quickly break down zoning. Zoning is like you want to build a house here, and maybe the house that's not what there's a code for what that land can be used for. Certain land is coded for a business, commercial property. Certain zones and land is coded for housing, and so there's rules to what you can put on it. So you could put zoning rules in and say we don't need any more. Let me back up. Every Tuesday they have zoning hearings. Well, prior to the pandemic, and the city councils and the mayor's office weighs in. They have a board that the mayor appoints people to, and people come in and they ask for what's called a variance. Hey, I know this lot might not be big enough for this house usually, but I just want to give me permission. We need more houses. I just need a variance. I need people to vote. And if everybody says yes, the city council say, yeah, we support that. That porch is not going to hang over your neighbor's yard. You're not building a 6-story house in a neighborhood full of 3-story houses. You know what I mean? They keep things even. Then every Tuesday, if somebody says, you know what, we need to open another sober home in Roxbury. We need to open up another halfway house in Roxbury. We want to open up another methadone treatment center in Roxbury. The responsible thing, in my opinion, would be to oppose that. Because if you're an elected official, you should know, in my opinion, that the residents already feel like there's too many of them. That's not an opinion. That's knowledge that I got from talking to residents in my neighborhood over the last 10, 15 years. It ain't even new knowledge. It's been out there. So every Tuesday, I would make sure that, if a sober home or one of these things come up, then we're proposing it for Roxbury. And before you get all worked up, that's not to say that sober homes aren't good and halfway houses aren't good and treatment centers aren't good. That's just to say we got enough of them in Roxbury. Spread them shits out. Put one in Rosendale. Put one in West Roxbury. Put one in Mattapan. Put one in the Back Bay. Put one in the Fenway. Spread them shits out. We don't need 15 between Hamden Street, between Breezeway. I'll come back to Breezeway. To Hamden Street, to the Methadone Mile, to the Pine Street Inn. You know what I mean? We don't need them all concentrated there so that people that are the most vulnerable are coming outside and they might be trying to get off of heroin. Same thing with liquor stores. They could oppose that, Domingos. They could oppose those things. And I'm glad I just peeked over the comments because I want to make sure it's a dialogue, right? So they could put out these rules, because I used to do it. When I worked for Councilor Flaherty, Tuesday I would show up. I would say, my name's Carlos Enriquez on behalf of Councilor Michael Flaherty's office. I rise in opposition to this. We don't feel like it fits the fabric of the community. Or we rise to support it, or we stay out of it, which is sometimes the easy route for a politician. And I only use Michael as an example because that's my lived experience. I did it. I know that it gets done like that every Tuesday. That's just the zoning piece, right? That's just the zoning in terms of what they can do weekly to make sure no more new ones come. And that's just a quick fix. The longer fix would be, and this came up in the meeting the other night with the South End Roxbury Partnership 2.0, you might be tired of me saying it. Let me keep saying it until you join the group, because if you really care about this issue, then you know that the group needs more numbers, and the more numbers we have, the more political power they have, and the more political power they have, the more they can hold people accountable, and not just use accountable as a buzzword, but actually use leverage and position these elected officials to do some of the things on the list, if you agree. So then I said, Michael, they have a zoning code for marijuana dispensaries in Boston. You can't, because everybody, I smoke marijuana. So I pay attention to marijuana codes, where they're going to be able to open up the dispensaries. So there's a code that says, a zoning code, that says you can't operate, you can't even open one within 1,000 feet of anywhere children under 18 congregate. That's part of the code. It's part of the law that they wrote in. Another part of the rule is that you can't open one, I believe it's a half mile to a mile. I got to check. I think it's a mile. A mile of the next one, right? That way they're not all popping up in one neighborhood. That way Blue Hill Avenue don't have like the marijuana strip. It ain't 10 marijuana stores like you see with liquor stores, storefront churches, and barbershops. And I'm not, you take it how you want. I'm not knocking those things, but I'm just saying they're not very well regulated. It's not, it's not the only businesses we could have down our main thoroughfares. We don't need to have, I don't think we need to have 25 barbershops, 15 liquor stores, all block by block by block. It's not a good economic plan, but that's my opinion. So then Michael said, yo, you're right. He didn't say it like that. But he said, yo, you're right. I actually wrote that amendment saying that they have to be spread out by at least, a certain distance to make sure that what I just described, that all the marijuana dispensaries, whether medicinal or recreational, are not in the same neighborhood. So people don't have to, so one neighborhood doesn't have to suffer, and one neighborhood doesn't have to get all the benefits, the economic benefits either. And he said that's what a city councilor can do. And I'm thinking, if that's what a city councilor can do, why ain't nobody done it? Because if I thought of it and could put it on paper, and I don't have a staff of 5, and ain't nobody paying me $100,000 to think of this shit, what's going on? Either the leadership don't have the will, they don't have the expertise, and I don't think it's they don't have the expertise, because they managed to find their way there, or the residents don't have the will to make sure that they're on top of their job, because they should have come up with this a long time ago. So any of those 7 councils I just named, or all 7 of those councils I just named, can work together and come up with a zoning amendment to make sure that this happens, to protect neighborhoods like Roxbury, the South End, and others that are disproportionately affected by this issue. How am I doing here? I think I'm on 7. So then to wrap up just the city level, because I ain't gonna drag this out more than a half hour, because I know people don't have the will to listen. I know some people want to listen, but some people just want to quit. So here's the game part. Sometimes mayors will do funny things in an election year, and they'll agree to everything. Yeah, I do that. I do that. You want that? I'll do that. They hand it to you and give you what you want. And then the game is the next year, that shit disappears. All of a sudden, we don't have any money in the budget for that. And they roll it out. So when I talked about how much money, I said, I don't think what I just suggested, the street sweepers, the Parks and Recreation team, the Public Works team, the needle boxes, and the zoning amendments, which cost nothing, that's just paper, I don't think they even total $1 million to operate per year. But I could be wrong. I'm not crunching numbers. I'm just coming up with the idea right now. Because like I said, if I had a staff of 5, we'd be crunching the numbers. So I would ask my request as a resident or a city councilor or a mayor that's managing the process would be to give me a dollar amount. Right? After you give me the size of the team that needs to be made to do what's being asked, give me a dollar amount so I know how much it costs every year. That way I know and I can show how much I'm investing in making sure the residents of Roxbury, the South End, parts of Dorchester, and parts of South Boston don't have to keep dealing with this bullshit. And if it's like $1 million, that's nothing. It's peanuts. I think they spent $3 million on police overtime just to move the homeless and the addicts out of the mile when the CO got his ass whooped. And then they spent $3 million on OT. The cops come, they arrest everybody, they tell everybody to move. Where you send homeless people? You just sent them deeper into the neighborhoods that are already affected. They go running, scattering into the, some of them get their human rights violated, some of them are arrested, some of them lose all the little belongings they have. The police officers punch that clock and get their OT check. sign over that check, put it in the bank, $3 million. I ain't mad at you if you're a police officer and you're paying your bills with that $3 million. I am mad at the manager, the management of those funds, because we ain't, as a community, didn't get shit for that $3 million. I mean, you might have got a little trickle down. Those cops might eat at your local sub shop, and they might eat at the pizza store. Hopefully not Stashes, but they might, or Upham's House of Pizza, but they might be eating somewhere and putting that money back in. But definitely not $3 million is not going back in. Shit, half of those cops probably don't even live in the city, so that money is just gone. So $1 million investment. The reason why I want you to ask your city council to ask for that number is that way you can make sure it's in the budget every year. That way you can make sure it's in the budget this year. And if y'all choose to reelect the mayor, or the next mayor comes in, you can make sure that million, that 1.5, that $2 million stays in the budget, because that's what keeps us from dealing with needles, condoms, blood, our kids from having to see it, lewd sex acts in the middle of the street, broad daylight, breaking into cars, breaking into homes. This is what helps keep that away. And I don't want to hear about defunding the police. I ain't saying nothing about defunding the police. All I'm saying is manage the freaking money so that the money's being used well. 3 sheets, that was just page 1, right? I'm going to save these. These are for what you asked for at the state level. You know what I'm saying? What you ask for your state reps to do to support that. And they can sign on to that letter to the mayor, too. All 7 councilors can write a letter and say, this is what we want, send it to the mayor's office, and the residents can come up with a petition that says the same thing, and 8,000 of y'all can sign in on a petition online, or y'all can call in on your own. The state reps could get on board, the state senator could get on board, and then y'all could call up to Congress. Y'all could talk to Congresswoman Presley and Senator Markey and say, yo, on the recovery side of things, we need you to find a couple tens of millions of dollars to help with recovery. But until then, the local people need to be doing this shit, if they have the will to do it, and if the residents have the will to push them to it. But without that, we just gonna keep bumping our gums, and your children are gonna keep losing playgrounds. And winter's coming, as they say in the Game of Thrones. You already have encampments and playgrounds, and encampments on Mass Ave. You know, you think about Skid Row in LA, much bigger city. That shit don't happen overnight. It happens over years of neglect. The years of neglect that we've been seeing now in Boston. So how long before you lose an entire neighborhood? They building neighborhoods downtown like the Seaport. They used to be empty. They built a whole neighborhood, got money to build a whole neighborhood. And they letting this one go to shit. And no disrespect to those that are suffering from addiction. But that doesn't mean it has to be at the expense of the hard-working residents that live there and have lived there all their lives and are trying to raise families there. You have an obligation to these people. You have an obligation to your neighbor to make sure that they don't have to deal with this, so that your kids don't have to deal with this. If you keep waiting because you don't have the will, this will become what the neighborhood is. This will become Boston's Skid Row. To those that are old enough, you remember the combat zone. The combat zone didn't just happen magically. It was where it was allowed. It was where prostitution, drug use, and all that was allowed. Finally, when some money came in, you know, they built that neighborhood up and pushed everybody out, pushed everybody this way. Where do you think they've been since the combat zone moved to Blue Hill Avenue and Dorchester Ave, and then it came back down to Methadone Mine? It's a plan. It's not just happening organically like you think. These are decisions being made by people with will, people with power, people that have a vision and want to make something happen for themselves, and it might not serve you. So I offer these suggestions. You can email me at los@stillreppin' if you want to list these suggestions. Any organizers in their neighborhood that want to talk about these and get them, I'll send them to you via email. You can reach out to me again. It's los@stillreppin.com. And we can talk about strategies, how you can share it with your neighbors. You know what I mean? You maybe just post it on your Facebook page, or maybe we make it a PDF and you share it. Maybe you knock on your neighbor's door and tell them about it. Maybe you call your peoples and tell them about it. Like, yo, I rock with this plan. You know what I'm saying? I fuck with this. And then maybe y'all call the city councilor. Maybe y'all won't. Maybe a city council will do the right thing. Maybe they're listening and they'll call the mayor. Maybe the mayor's people are watching now and like, yo, you might want to get in front of this before we get the call. But maybe they won't. Because if you ain't had the will to do it this far, why they gonna jump for you now? If you either gonna flex or you ain't gonna flex. You know, that's it. I really don't 8 counselors including Kenzie Bach. Yeah, I mean it goes into the Back Bay. Um, certain neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that are making noise, like I said in the other videos, the neighborhoods that are making noise, that are flexing because they have the will to do it. And I get it, they got time. You know, they're not under the same. I get it. South End, you live in $1 million brownstone. You have a little bit more free time to make these phone calls. You got a little bit more political muscle to make that call. But yeah, 400 calls, 500 calls coming from Roxbury. If y'all care the way y'all say y'all care, 500 calls coming from Roxbury puts a lot of pressure on Councilor Kim Janey to sign on to a letter like this. Michael Flaherty said he's down with all the. I think Domingos, correct me if I'm wrong. Michael said he was down with all these things I just listed, right? So if Michael's down with it, you got one down of the 7. All you need is 6 more to go. 8 if you include Councilor Kenzie Bach. 500 calls combined with emails or tags on Twitter or tags on Facebook is going to get the same response. It's going to put pressure on Councilor Kim Janey. It's going to put pressure on Councilor Ed Flynn. It's going to put pressure on Councilor Frank Baker and your 4 at-large councilors, Anissa Asabi George, Michelle Wu, Michael Flaherty, Julia Mejia. That's what we should focus on. Now, there's other councilors that I didn't name. And I want to be clear. There's other councilors, 13. I didn't name the other ones because it's not happening in their backyard. I named the at-large councilors because they represent you. I named the district councilors where it affects their district, where you see this happening in their district. I don't expect the Austin Brighton councilor, not that they don't care about it, but it ain't their top priority because it's not happening in their neighborhood. And their job, the district councilor's job, is to serve their specific geographical neighborhood. Now, if it was wandered out to Brighton, then I expect, the Brighton council to get involved. If it wanders out to Mattapan, then I expect to hear from Councilor Andrea Campbell. If it wanders out to Kelly Field and Hyde Park, then I expect to hear from Ricardo Arroyo. But 7 is enough. Start with the 7. Start with 1, and then get to the 7. Now, I'm over time running my mouth. I got things to do. I gotta go wash the dishes, walk the dog, support local businesses, artists, you name it, people, leadership, good leadership, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Thank y'all for tuning in. Got a couple Call of Duty games to get. Raj, you ready to get back on? Carlene, how are you? Mingos, I appreciate your support. I appreciate supporting you. I appreciate your leadership on this issue for I don't know how long, 7, 8 years. I feel terrible that you've lost so many mentoring possibilities for the amount of children that have been pulled out of those programs. And I said I was going to leave, and now here I am talking again. But these are the ripple effects. You have a man who had coached 350 kids in Clifford Park. These are young people from the ages of probably like 8 up to teens, right? Because we don't have the will as a community to do nothing about it, the park gets overrun, gets overtaken by people not from our community. Now, parents have to be responsible. They have to pull their kids out of the program. So instead of their kids being in a program that might teach them about teamwork, hard work, dedication, being their best, they're out of that program. So when you think about, and then without getting too deep into another issue, you think about gun violence or drug use and people taking the wrong path. This was an avenue they had to express themselves. This was an avenue they had to learn. This was an avenue where they could build up their physique and learn some self-respect and pride. And we lose it. We lose it because we don't have the will. We're waiting on somebody else to do something. Ain't nobody gonna do shit for you that you ain't gonna do for yourself.